Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Kashif Booth podcast. If you're new here, each week I sit down with a guest and we discuss their career so far, the highs, the lows, and what's next for them. Today's guest is Luke Flight. I've known him for about 8 years, which is crazy to say. He is an editor from London. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Thanks for having me, Cash.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's good to have you on. I knew I had to have you on. I mean, I've had Dion and Sim, our old colleagues from way back in the day, on the
Yeah,
first season, and so I had to have Luke. And then definitely I'm gonna hit up Lena as well. That was our little click back
yeah,
then as well. So yeah, so how are you? How's things?
yeah. Everything's good. Can't complain. Working away. Um, yeah. So I think everything's going so far so good. I feel like a lot's changed since the last time we worked together, but hopefully, mostly good. Mostly good.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so. I'd say so. So you're an editor from London, and when I first met you all those years ago at Raw, which was back in 2014, you were an edit assistant. So what was your journey from, because I know you started off as a runner. What was your journey from, okay, runner to edit assistant at Raw to now being a freelance editor, working on literally everything?
So I'll give you the quick version. I did work experience whilst I was studying at Portsmouth. I did a couple of weeks work experience, and then when I graduated, they had a job open up for a runner position. So I was a runner there for about 6 months, and I think the good thing about that company was it was quite small. So although I was, in post production, it's just making teas and coffees. I was able to help out on more like technical side and help out. So after 6 months, I managed to go freelance, and I was just freelance edit assisting for about another 6 months, and then a job opportunity at Raw, a company that I looked constantly see like good stuff they'd made. A job opportunity came up to be an edit assistant there, and I applied for it, and I was lucky enough to get the job. And that's when I think I must have been there for about a year when then you started, and I
I
think we
think
worked.
so. I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
coming up to a year definitely because you started in 2014.
Yeah, like spring 2014. Yeah.
Yeah, I started in June 2013, so that makes sense.
Right, right, right.
Um, yeah, so then I was at Raw until June 2015. And then yeah, Raw sent me out to Gold Rush for 3 months. Then I came back and I was assistant editor for 3 months on Gold Rush. And then I just started freelance assistant editing. And then I was lucky enough to meet two editors who are very well known. One called Andy Warboys and one called Matt Lowe. Both have won like BAFTAs, Emmys, those sort of, or nominated or won. I can never remember the full CVs, but they were lucky enough to put me under their wing for about 2 years. I worked solely for them, and they sort of trained me how to. I knew how to use an Avid, but they trained me how to edit properly, I would say, to quite a good standard. And yeah, I worked for them for about 2 years, and then they sort of kicked me out and said, "It's time to sort of start editing and start making mistakes and learning on the job." And yeah, I've been freelancing. I think it's probably been about 4 years now. I've been editing projects and stuff like that. So yeah, it's so far so good.
Nice, nice. I mean, I remember when I first met you at Raw, I remember I was like, okay, this is a very diverse team. I was not expecting my very
Mhm.
first like contract because I had done freelance runner work for quite a while, but that was like my first long-term contract. So I did not expect that. I was like, wow, look at this. Like we got my line manager's black, edit assistants, mixed race, half white, half black. You had Dion, who's black, Lena Colombian, and then Rob, who was white. So I was like, wow. Now, only till now, my current job, that had been the most diverse team I ever had worked with in the 8 years I've been in this industry. So that was
Wow.
really cool. And like, I remember just us, we had a good bond. That was really cool. And I always remember you being hella stressed because you'd either be you'd either be like chilling or you'd be leaving the office at 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what was it like being an edit assistant? Because I don't think people realize what an edit assistant does, for a production company. So can you remember what was like your day-to-day duties?
I want to say I was lucky and unlucky during my time. I think the busyness came from when I joined Raw, it was a smaller company, It was still a big company, but I like when I first started, I was busy, but we was there during a huge boom. I think was you there when it got bought out? I'm not sure. Maybe
I literally just came when it got bought out, and so that's why they needed four runners. Do you remember there was like
exactly
four of
because
us?
there was two runners
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
So
exactly.
there was only two runners, and then they hired four of you, and then maybe they should have hired another edit assistant. Who knows? But I was there from it. Like it was definitely a very successful company, but I feel like it suddenly boomed, and they were just getting commissions, commissions, commissions. So I was sort of stretched, and I had a lot of support. You guys supported me, and Sim supported me. I had a lot of support there, but it was just a case of there was just lots more work, and I think when I left, I know they hired, then they hired an IT guy, they hired another assistant. So I think now they've got I think they've got two full-time editors, an edit assistant, and a couple of IT guys. So you can see the boom from when we was there to now. But as for what I was mainly up to, I was helping the bigger productions didn't need me because they had a big enough amount of money to hire like data wranglers and stuff like that. But I was basically, I would say I was giving advice on the technical aspect, data wrangling on projects, uploading things for Vimeo for execs to watch, anything technical involved. I was probably the first point of call buying new computers. For a long time, I was first point of call if someone's machine wasn't working. That was me as well. So I quite a wide range of things. But I think the team that used me the most was development.
Mhm.
I was helping out on sizzles, whether it was helping cut a couple of them, but mainly towards the end, I got to help cut a lot, but mainly it was casting tapes, development sizzles, getting footage in, just so we can try and get more commissions through the door.
Nice. And because you're more of a factual editor, because Raw is known for its factual entertainment, yes, they do scripted, but it's not on the same scale. I mean, scripted takes so long, like years of development. I mean, a web series pilot that I worked on is now kind of gone into that realm as well. And that's a whole load of politics. But with factual, it tends to kind of, hey, you could just get a brief from, you know, a client, let's say maybe, or a network like BBC, for example, and then you've got to develop something and the turnaround's very quickly. And so from what I remember with you is like sometimes you would probably do a pilot with development and then you would just have to cut something together just so they could present it back to BBC and stuff like that. And so that's why a lot of the time you were just so busy because the turnaround could be in like 2 weeks and you just have to kind of get it through. So because you're more of a factual editor, what would you say are the differences between scripted and factual? Because it's with factual, you're kind of sending out a certain message from what the producer or director wants to kind of convey. So what kind of stuff have you worked on or do work on, and what would you say are the differences between scripted?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, I don't know. Although just to give a bit of background, although personally I watch mostly scripted, I
Mhm.
much prefer working on factual because I think you get a lot of inspiration from scripted. Because in scripted, the thing I like about it is everything is perfect. Everything is just such a high standard compared to factual, where things are at a high standard, but sometimes you've only got the footage you've got, and you have to sort of not lower the standard, but you can only take it to a certain level. But I quite like the realness in that and the grittiness of that, and I kind of like, as an editor, I like having to deal with that sort of struggle. Whereas having all this perfect footage, you've got this imperfect thing that you can feel like you can make perfect and make emotional. Um, I would say, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but I would say that's the biggest difference, and I think it's why I've always preferred factual.
No, that makes sense. Because a few years ago, like I had no money, needed a job, and I
Mm.
was an edit researcher for about a week, and it was on a very interesting show called Sex Pod. So I learned way too much information about sex, let's just say that. And it was very interesting for me to be an edit researcher because essentially what I was doing was you had the script from the director, and you just had to break it down as to what they wanted. And I was working with the editor closely, and we would just like insert the clips while the producer director was out there shooting sex scenes to show what we were piecing together with the interviews, what had been shot. So that was really cool for me. But at the same time, it felt like, well, the editor wasn't really kind of putting his own spin on anything. It was just like him following what I was going through, but then he would advise me to kind of use my creativity and think of what could work and stuff like that. Would you say that's the same? Because I'm sure you've worked on bigger productions where you've got like an edit researcher, edit producer. Do you feel the stifle sometimes, or do you feel like you just got to go with what they want?
Again, that's a great question. I think for me, because I'm 4 years in, so I'm not 20 years in.
Mhm.
So I definitely feel like a lot of stuff that I worked on, which is great, a lot of stuff that I worked on at the start of my career for the first couple of years, I would always be with someone quite experienced. So when I did a Banged Up Abroad episode, I was with a very experienced, a really good director. So I was sort of I was trying to be a sponge because he'd obviously done this multiple times. He was clearly very good at it. He was a very good director. So I think certain times you play you play your position. Like I know I'm not very experienced in this. It's I think it was my second edit at the time. So I was sort of soaking up his knowledge. And then but the good thing about it is, and I think the best people I've worked with, they make it collaborative. He would say, "Look, what do you think about this?" And I would say, "Oh, he's like, no, just give your honest opinion. In an edit suite, when it's you and the director, you or an edit producer, you and the edit team, it should be a place where you can have conversation. And I think that's a thing that it's good to get over is you shouldn't feel embarrassed about your ideas or you shouldn't feel embarrassed about trying something because it might not work, but it might work brilliantly. You don't know until you say it or you try it. So sometimes it's good to have that open dialogue. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear. So you've been editing for 4 years now. So what would you say is lacking within the industry? Because you're a mixed race man. So how many people do you see like yourself in the editing suite? So when you go to a post house, like, do you see yourself?
uh I don't see I'm trying to think of editors wise, diversity wise. I think I've met three or four female editors, like regardless of
Mhm.
race, ethnicity, or race. I've met one African editor, like um, North African editor, uh, and I think that's all. That's it. I don't think I've met anyone else.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I've met one male. I think I've met one editor from an ethnic
Okay.
minority,
Mhm.
ethnic background.
But see, sometimes I think when I ask that question, because some people say, well, why is it there's not enough black or Asian or more female editors in the room? And sometimes it's not even a question of, oh, why they're not in there. Sometimes they're just not the popular things people want to do,
Mm,
and sometimes it's, everyone wants to be a producer or a director, those are like the popular ones. So you will
yeah.
see a lot more diversity there. It's not great, but it's, a
Mm,
lot better. So yeah, so I just feel like when I was a part of different organizations and I'm trying to like encourage and let people know that like if you actually want to get in the industry, there's so much more you can do than just like the big three, which is writer, producer, director. We need you in the edits. We need you
yeah.
in wardrobe, especially makeup,
Yeah.
really hair. Yeah, I'm sure you've edited a lot of stuff where you're like, yo, this guy's lineup is just madness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You look like some girl's makeup, and you're like, yo, I can tell you're wearing makeup. Like that foundation is
Mm,
not blended,
mm,
like so that's why I wanted to
yeah.
see what you thought of that as well. So do you ever, speaking of that, do you ever like when you're watching a show? I know you said you watch mostly scripted, but if you ever do watch like a documentary and stuff, like do you ever look at stuff and feel like that was poorly edited, or how did they miss that? Or like when there's huge continuity issues, because you see it going viral on social media all the time, like, oh, they missed that. How did they miss that? Not knowing that, look, it is what it is. Like that probably was the best shot and they just left it
Yeah.
in. So
Yeah.
like, does that ever happen to you?
What? Well, where I see stuff.
Yeah, yeah, just like when you're
Yeah,
chilling casually.
definitely. I definitely see stuff, and I'm like, that is poor. But then at the same time, like you said, I, part of me wants to think that that was the best option with what they had. Do you see what I mean? So sometimes it is hard to be too good because I've been in a couple of situations where we haven't got what we need. So you kind of have to make it work. So although I do see it, and sometimes because I don't know what happened, I don't judge it too much because it might have been the best thing, might have been the best option available to them. Whereas I feel like you can be more critical of like something scripted because I know just from being around, I've assisted on script. I haven't cut anything scripted, but I've just seen the standard to which everything is,
Mhm.
and everything is covered like to a T. And like the higher the budget, I mean, everything just gets perfected more and more. Whereas I think with documentary, you kind of get away of it with those rougher edges because it's more about the story and the emotion and the feeling
Yeah.
than those sort of technical things. But yeah, continuity and scripted is obviously huge. But yeah,
No, it's true. I mean, I'm very picky on it. Like on my sets when I've done stuff independently, or look, I'm all over them. I'm like, sorry, I'm invading your personal space, but this is looking a bit mad. Like, I
yeah,
need to fix you, like your tie, your shirt, and stuff. And some people just don't care. Like, I remember a pilot I did, like, this guy was wearing a suit blazer and the collar was up at the back. And I was like, yo, that's not right. And they were like, oh, I don't care about that. And there's clearly continuity issues. And it's like, some people just don't care. So that's
yeah.
also what happens. It just slips through the cracks like that as well. So yeah. So out of everything you've done, because you mostly do obviously factual, have you ever done like reality TV? Have you ever done that before?
Uh, that's controversial. I don't know if what I don't know if certain shows could be considered reality TV. I don't I don't know what they're under.
Yeah.
Um, it's difficult to say because I don't I will some I'm not I don't want to say which shows, but I've done things which I would consider reality TV, but other people might not consider them reality TV. Do you
Yeah.
see what I mean?
I
So
understand.
it's
Mhm.
yeah, that's a difficult question. That's
No, I
difficult.
totally understand. Look, I just left my previous job, Discovery, and now I can talk about them freely because I left. I used to just say this US network I worked for. Now I can talk about it. And yeah, there was a lot of yeah, like people think of Discovery and they think, oh wow, it must be like hard hitting documentaries. I'm like, no, it's a lot of trash
Yeah,
reality TV, like a lot of social experiments. Like, of
yeah.
it's like, no, that's not what it is. And so the reason why I asked is because I find reality TV quite interesting and just to see how it's pieced together as well. I've had friends who worked
Okay.
on like Love and Hip Hop and all those kind of shows, but I just wanted to see how it's structured like that, because everyone knows they're scripted to a certain degree, but what do you pull from it as well? Because even like, for example, if you are editing a documentary, what do you see in a clip? What you might see something in a clip, right? What the director probably has missed, and you've seen it. What do you pull from that? Because are you looking at it from an emotive bit or a bit what could be quite scandalous, or how you feel like the audience will react? How do you kind of decide that when piecing together something?
How do I just sorry, say that because I haven't done that much reality TV, so
Okay.
it's a bit
No, the reason
difficult.
why I was asking about reality TV is because I find that quite fascinating of just how it's pieced together. But then
Mm,
because you've mostly done documentary, I was
yeah.
saying when you are reviewing footage and let's say a director might not want it, but then you've just pulled it in because you feel like that kind of is really emotive in certain ways, or you feel like the director has missed that, or you feel like the audience might react to it in a certain way. What do
Mm.
you kind of do with it? Is it because you've been sat through watching a bit of footage, or the edit assistant has just pieced together something what's great and you just reviewed it like that? So how do you kind of decipher that?
So I think the main thing that I go on, and it takes time, and I'm still not all the way there yet, but I think you can never have a second reaction to something. So whenever I'm watching stuff, I always try and remember how I felt the first time I watched it. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that's, like I said, I'm not all the way there yet, but I think that's the biggest thing that you get with time and confidence. And yeah, the longer you do something, the longer you'll start to trust your instincts. And I think that's the thing that makes you quicker is you don't sit and think, wow, how will this make people feel? You just remember this is how I felt when I watched it. And you kind of got to go with, people start to hire you because you have a gut instinct. There's lots of reasons people hire you, but you would like to think people hire you because of your instincts and your creativity, and hopefully you're bringing another string to the bow.
Mhm.
Sometimes, because directors don't want to work with someone who sees the whole world the exact same as them. Well, most directors don't because sometimes they like to be challenged. They like something new brought to the table. So all I can do is bring my preference. So I try to, anything I watch, if it made me laugh hysterically the first time I watched it, I'll always remember that, because when you watch something six, seven, 8 times, you rarely laugh that many times.
Mhm.
But you just try to never forget how you felt the first time. And I think a thing that I try to do is, with editing, it's all in the eyes, and any, looks just say so much. So I'm always looking for those shots that can say a lot without any words.
No, that's good. That's really good to hear. I like that because I'm not an editor. I mean, when I used to edit,
You
look,
definitely edit. I definitely know you as an editor. I definitely know you as being able to edit
yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah. But I feel like editing is a talent, and editing is also a form of directing. And so that's not my bag. So I edited just because I didn't have anyone at the time, so I just did it. But I feel
Mm,
like when you work with editors closely and you look at their work and they've got a particular eye for something, it's brilliant. I love it because can take something I've shot or what I gave them as a treatment and they get it and they just put it into, into the narrative what I've produced. And I'm like, yeah, see, this is why you're brilliant and why I stay in my lane. And
mm,
I'm fine with that.
yeah.
And I think, as I said, I think it's harder for what you guys do because being in factual documentary, I feel like that's the hardest part of editing because you got to formulate it into a 90-minute film or a 40-minute episode or whatever, however long it is. And so that's completely different because documentary is also about, interviews and stock footage. There's so much going on with it. And so when I did do a documentary years ago, it was just like, yeah, this isn't for me. But I love them as well.
So what do you look for in an editor then?
What I look for in an editor is somebody who understands my vision, like particularly, and they have to understand they have to understand what the story that I want to tell. So if they don't get it and they don't understand the style and aesthetic or what the director his vision is in terms of like looking at the shot list and camera angles or the cinematography in terms of like how they've the movement, let's say, because for my work I love movement in everything that I do. So if there's not movement and you're just trying to make it static or you're not using certain cuts which are just going to move the story along, or like let's say there was a 5 minute scene from a pilot I recently did earlier this year, and my editor just chopped it up into like a sequence, and it worked so great. It was you think it was a feature film. So I want you to also don't be afraid to just use your creativity as well. And so once I've connected with an editor like that to be able to leave them to just do that, I have no notes. I'm like, perfect, perfect, and that's
Yeah.
great. And it's about trusting them to be able to get a good colorist as well. Somebody who can do great grading for me as well, especially because a lot of my actors are black. And so you make sure that lighting is such a key element. So when it comes to the grade, I need like the skin to pop. So it's about trusting that process and knowing that their team can deliver as well. So
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, so because you are freelance, what is that like? Because a lot of people, if they don't get in the industry, they don't realize how it's such a freelance life. So can it be scary for you? Do you feel like, okay, I don't know when the next check is coming or the next job, or planning holidays and stuff like that? How is it for
It's
you?
difficult. Being freelance is difficult. I can't pretend it's easy, but I think because I've been doing it for so long now, I think I've been freelance for about 6, 7 years now. Um, because even when I was working for those two editors, it was based on what projects they got and whether the projects they got was able to have an assistant, etc., etc. So, um, I enjoy being freelance, and I don't think I would change it because it allows me to have more time off when I want to have time off.
Mhm.
But it is hard. The way I like to break it down is I need 4 jobs a year to survive. Jobs are normally 10 to 14 weeks. So I normally say, right, I need to make sure I have 4 jobs each year to survive. And I think when I break it down like that, maybe it's just in my mind, but that seems more acceptable or more possible to say, right, can I get 4 jobs this year?
Mhm.
And things have worked out quite well. And I think it's not like all the editors are freelance and no one else is. I think because everyone is freelance, I feel like people tend to understand certain situations and certain circumstances. Um, so I've yeah, I think being freelance is probably worth it for me personally.
Nice, nice.
Mhm.
So, what can people expect from you next? You know, you still going to go down factual route? Do you think you'd ever wander over to scripted?
For for me, I'm not a scripted person. I think it takes a certain skill. Um, I think for me, I enjoy storytelling. I enjoy emotion. So for me personally, the dream is to edit feature docs. My dream is to do one film a year, a feature doc, and something that inspires and something that creates change. Um, yeah, or in sort of investigative documentaries as well. Like I'm trying to think of films that I would love I wish I cut. Icarus is
Mm.
one that I love. That's probably the one that I watched. I watched it again last night. That's why it's so fresh in my mind. But there's loads. There's loads. I should have had some recommendations actually lined up for this.
Nah,
But
right.
Icarus is the one that sticks out because I watched it last night and it's just unbelievable.
Nice. And where can people see any of your previous work? Do you have a website or IMDb?
You know what? Watch this space. I have a website under construction.
Okay,
I have a
okay.
website under
Uh-huh.
construction and it will be out. But the show, like I said, Drive to Survive on Netflix, that'll be out in March. Make or Break
Okay.
is out on Apple TV, I think in January. Season 2 is out in January. Before that, I was doing Ambulance on the BBC. I did additional edited a film about Harvey Weinstein, which got into Sundance.
Nice,
That
nice.
was huge. Um, I was assistant editor on Serengeti Rules, which won a couple of Emmys. I this is sort of where I learnt my trade.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are the main things. But hopefully, as the years go by, I'll be working on more and more stuff that I enjoy because it's not always about awards and stuff, although that stuff is great. But my main focus is working on things that can help provoke change. And because I think it's quite a powerful medium, TV and film and documentary. And that's kind of why I got into it. So hopefully I'll get to make something one day and then someone will be able to say, you changed the way I perceive something. That's the dream.
So, what would you tell to an upcoming editor who wants to get into the industry and get to where you are now? What would you say the route is? You know, because it's very hard to get in as an editor. So, what would you say is the right step to do?
I mean, I guess every editor I've known has always gone a different way. But I think the key things that stood out for me is know where you want to end up. And even if it takes a bit longer down that path, follow that path. So for me, I think the best advice I can give to someone, if I was to go back in time, the best advice I would say is find people you want to learn from and just learn from them and work hard and learn from them. And those are the two keys. And I think if you do that, I think you're going to go a long way because I'm sure you're only going to want to learn from people who are making good stuff that you enjoy watching. And I think if you work hard and you prove yourself to be someone who they're happy to have around and they might employ you and stuff like that, I think if that's the best way to sum it up. But I think one thing that I see a lot of editors struggle with is that they have an option to edit, not to downplay anything, but they have an option to like edit VTs on a news channel, but they want to edit, Netflix prime time or like BBC One primetime documentaries. And I would say sometimes, even if you get the opportunity to edit those VTs on a news channel, sometimes it's worth not taking that job and just staying focused on the course you want to do and assist on the stuff you want to do because that opportunity will come. Although it takes longer, sometimes it takes longer because that's the good stuff that a lot of people want to do.
Nice. But would you say that an aspiring editor should just develop their reel, really develop their role? I know you can work in post houses. I mean, a lot of people who I knew worked in post houses, they just felt like they were a barista. They just were in and out knocking on doors. Hey, do you want some lunch or coffee? And that was it. And they never really learned anything. So, what do you think is more beneficial, working in a post house or just like developing your portfolio and going from there?
Ooh, I think To be honest, both I think are both quite important. I think developing your portfolio is always good. You know, you can never, there's no editor who's perfect. There's no editor who's, they've completed it. Every editor, like the best editors that I know, I think they're good with their instincts. And a lot of the time they've built up a lot of experience. And so they know what works and they know what doesn't. But I think, it's about meeting the right people. It's all, this industry is all about meeting the right people. Unfortunately, I think that's why it's difficult for people from certain backgrounds to get involved, because the industry has been one way for such a long time. It's difficult to build those bridges. And I think being amongst people who are in those positions is always helpful, and just proving yourself. I think that's why, how I sort of ended up where I was, is just that I sort of worked hard, and I think people was happy to sort of have me around, and I was able to do a good job for them. And I think meeting those people, because I started out making teas and coffees for people, and people have gone on to employ me in the future, maybe not directly away, but people have gone on to employ me in the future. So it does all help. And I think, what's the saying? Hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard.
It's true, very
I
true.
think I think the ideal is to always be both, but I think you can always control what you can control. And I think that's the main thing.
No, that's really good advice. No, I like that because some people, they hate the idea of being a runner, and you always
Mm.
hear those people who never were a runner, and they're just like, "Oh, I never did that. I just like to be in a research." I'm like, "Good for you, okay? Good for you." Like,
Yeah.
you didn't have to deal with the pain I went through as a runner and doing all these terrible coffees and teas. Because at Raw, listen, I did not know how to use a cafetiere until I went to Raw, so I
Yeah.
had no reason to do that. So yeah. So I totally understand that. So that's really good advice. So yeah.
With a cafetiere, this is just going back to my time, but I never, even when I was a runner, like I said, I was a runner for 6 months in a post house. I never understood how to clean them. I never understood how you're supposed to clean them. I just ended up with loads of coffee going down the sink, and I'm pretty sure that's not how it's designed because I used to think this sink is going to get clogged up eventually.
That was my tactic too. Like, what was I supposed to do? Like, you have this at the end of the cafeteria, you got all this coffee, which is just like dried up. So I'm like, okay, down you go. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it was. Like,
Right, okay, I'm happy I'm not the only one, because I
yeah,
used to be so confused by that. I was just like, this can't be what's supposed to happen.
yeah, exactly. Wait, why can't you just have instant coffee like everybody else? Like, it
I know
was
that's the
just
good thing
weird.
about Americans. They don't mind crap coffee. Whenever there was America, they would just
Yeah,
drink the worst
yeah,
coffee, just straight out of the horrible coffee machine and
yeah,
stuff. Did you
exactly.
have to do a lot of that at Raw then? I never
Um,
noticed that side of
yeah,
things.
yeah, because you were too busy in the edit suite. Okay, like me, us guys, we were like setting up this meeting room, that meeting, and like putting out teas and coffees and biscuits and all that stuff. You know, look, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought, yeah, I was doing my teaspoons of the coffee into the
Yeah.
cafetiere, and I remember Sim being like, "What is that? That needs to get out." Or they were like, "This is horrible." I'm like, I don't know until I saw that they needed like a full spoon of like full
Mm,
like 3 or 4 spoonfuls of coffee before you
yeah.
could even go in there. So yeah, I learned a lot of that stuff. Don't know it now because I haven't had to make a tea and coffee in years. I'm so happy I've moved up in the industry. So that's a good thing. So yeah,
How
yeah,
would you rate your time at Raw?
Raw was a great experience. I think Sim created that role for me because essentially originally there was only supposed to have 3 runners, but
Mm,
she created it for me because she really liked me and liked my drive and how I was like trying to make it in the industry. So it was interesting at first. There was times where I
mm,
hated it and times when I really did enjoy it. You guys, you Lena Dion, it made it really fun to work at as well. And I learned a lot. And I think I appreciated it more every time I went back. So after that original period, it was like a little bit shaky and up and down. And then going back to it, it was like really cool because you were more appreciated and you saw like all the hard work, what people were seeing, and they did want the best for you. The only reason why Dion and I didn't move up at that time is because they just didn't have anything available for us. So
mm,
if there was something, we would have gone on to be a researcher and stuff. But me and Dion had similar aspirations, how we more so wanted to work in scripted. So it worked out for the best.
mm.
But yeah, I mean, Raw is I'm thankful for that being my very first like contracted job.
Mm,
Yeah, great memories. Still to this day, the most diverse team that I've ever had. And
great.
yeah, yeah. Crazy, but to say that,
Yeah, it is
that was eight
crazy.
years ago. But yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. There's two of the best years of my life, to be honest. I feel like when I started, it turned it. I guess going at the start of Raw, I felt like I was. I don't want to say immature, but I had a lot of growing up to do. And by the time I left, I was definitely more buttoned up and professional. And I feel like Raw was an experience that allowed me to grow. And there was a lot of people that nurtured me during that time.
Mhm.
And um, I find it really interesting because, people, there's this whole discussion now, like, are people different outside of work or are people more professional? And I feel like I sort of learned how to be professional at Raw, but
Mhm.
still be the same person.
Yeah.
And I think I can't, they allowed me to grow that way, and they sort of, Sim was a massive part of it. But even I've even got to, say to the guys at the top of the company, like, they were
Mhm.
great in allowing me to be who I was, and be fine with that.
Yeah.
And they really didn't care as long as I was doing a good job.
No,
And
I totally agree. No, I
yeah.
totally agree because the work ethic and the people you're around and working under people and how they worked has still stuck with me to this day. Just in terms of like the communication, the structure, the planning of everything. Yeah, if I don't have that at any job I'm working at, I'm just like, this is pants. And it's the truth because
Definitely.
literally it ends up being a terrible job I'm working on because that work ethic isn't there,
Mm,
and so I totally Raw was the great first experience. It helped set me up for my
mm.
career now. So totally agree.
But I just wanted to say that congratulations on doing this podcast. It's amazing you're doing it. And I actually envy the fact you're doing not just this podcast, but all of the things you're doing, because I wanted to do a podcast and I didn't. And I always regret that. And I'm always, I like to think of myself as someone who follows through with something they want to do, but it's not as easy as people think. And I think not just the podcast, but when you've done your own projects and you've done your own films, your own web series, your own documentaries, I don't think people fully understand the get up and go that it takes and the hard work it takes. And it's not as easy as, oh, I'll just call a few friends, we'll
Mhm.
have a chat for an hour and put it out. So just, yeah, well done. Just anytime I see you doing something of your own, it is, I don't want to say proud of you because we're the same, but it is, it's really cool that you're doing it. And you might give me the kick up the ass to start my own podcast as well, because it's fantastic what you're doing. I think it is good that people listen to these sort of things and listen to these sort of stories. But yeah, big up to you because it's good and it's hard work, and some people don't realize it and some people don't see it, but I do notice it, how good it is. So well
No,
done.
thank you. I appreciate that a lot. I mean, yeah, doing it was beneficial for me in a lot of ways. It definitely helped my confidence as well, and it
Mm,
definitely helped me get to where I am now. Yeah, because without it, boy, I don't know how I'd be. I'd probably be this still shy, introverted person who didn't know when to speak up. It's giving me the confidence to be able to walk into any room and not be afraid of who it is, whether you're
mm,
executive, creative director, managing director, whoever you are. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of your own money going into it, but it's paid off because a lot of the stuff that I've done, it's now in certain rooms. I wish I could share more, but I can't.
mm.
But
Yeah.
now it's also like I've done enough now, and now I'm enjoying hosting and stuff. That's fun as well and just going to another level. So yeah, I think it's very hard to do. Do it when you can. Don't feel pressured that oh you need to do this and that. Do it because you want to do it. That's the best
Mm,
thing. Like I do this podcast because I want to do it. I can't be always as consistent because life happens, I'm not
mm,
getting paid doing this. No one's sponsoring me, but it's
mm,
fun. And I get to give a platform to all the amazing people I know and share stories like yours as well, what can inspire
mm.
other people too. So yeah.
You gonna be on mine if I do mine?
Of course, of course. Let me know.
Um, You're not going to take it as more competition. No, I'm
You know
joking.
what? Please, I'm my own competition. So
I'm joking. I'm joking.
no,
No,
it's not.
it's good. It's good.
Yeah,
Well, congratulations, dude. And
thank you. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, so yeah. Well, thanks again, Luke, for coming on the show. It was great catching up with you.
thanks for having me, Cash.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I saw you, so it was good just seeing how you're doing and stuff. You still look young, you still look like the 23-year-old that I met all the years ago, black don't crack and all that. Because I know, look, aren't you married now? You got a daughter, right? So look,
Married
times
with
have
a daughter.
changed.
It's
So that's
crazy.
amazing. So like, yeah, so congrats on everything and all what you're doing. And I know your aspirations will come soon. So yeah. So yeah,
I appreciate
amazing.
it, Cash, and we should
Yeah.
catch up
Yeah.
off camera, off microphone, and have a proper
Yeah.
catch up sometime soon.
Yeah, that'll be really good. So yeah, thanks again, guys, for listening. You can follow me on my usual socials. You know them. It's very long, and I'm everywhere on the internet. So yeah, stay tuned for new episodes coming soon.